Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's kick off today's video with a storm season saga. A hurricane drops a neighbor's tree onto one family's pool enclosure, and unlicensed arborist chainsaws it the wrong way, racking up $300,000 in damage. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Fake arborist caused $300,000 in damages to my home. I live in Florida, and the hurricane was devastating for my community. During the storm, my neighbor's tree went down into my yard, destroying a fence and landing on my pool enclosure. There was damage, but it was limited. These things happen, and that's why insurance exists, and I immediately submitted a claim. The community was without power, internet, and very limited cellular coverage in the following days, but work began restoring the community. My neighbor came over to my house on day 2 of the aftermath to apologize for the tree and inform me that they had hired a licensed and insured arborist. According to the neighbor, the arborist wanted to start on the top side of the tree, which was currently in my yard, so he would be out the following day to meet with me and give me a quote. I thought this was great, as it meant I didn't have to search for one myself. The following day, the arborist met with me, gave me a price, and I told him that before he starts work, I'd have to check with my insurance to make sure he was covered. Not pleased with the delay, he told me that he was going to start on the neighbor's side. Growing up on a farm, having used chainsaws, I told him how bad of an idea this was. He shrugged and left my property, leaving his business card with the words insured, honest, creative, as well as what he lists as a license number. A few hours later, while my wife was outside cooking on a camp stove, day 3 with no power, the chainsaws began. He makes a straight cut. I call him, yelling, saying I can already see the pool enclosure beginning to buckle. He continues. I tell my wife to get inside and begin recording on my phone. The moment he moves the trunk of the tree, the side of the tree in my yard catapults. The majority of the pool enclosure collapses, the retaining wall breaks, the in-ground pool cracks, the roof buckles, and I'm left with over $300,000 in damages to my backyard and home. Livid, I call him, both to say, I told you so, and also to demand his insurance information. He says he'll email it to me immediately, and it's available on his website, but with very limited internet, that was impossible. I tell him to airdrop it to me, turn on my airdrop and wait, text him, refresh the airdrop time, call him, text him, nothing. He blocks my number. Something I noticed that evening when wireless data networks weren't as stressed is that the website on his card isn't active. I also note that his LLC is expired, he doesn't have a license, and therefore cannot have insurance. He also got arrested in August of 2012 for beating his wife, driving away with the kid in the car, then abandoning the kid in the car so that he could purchase some illegal stuff. Suing him? No, he doesn't have the money to pay for any judgment, and I'm more interested in making sure no one else uses his services when the region is just trying to recover. I buy his domain. I buy the domain of his first and last name. I buy domains for variations of his business name. I buy the domain to his mother and father's real estate agents' names. I build a website in 2 hours that details my glowing review of his character, his work, his arrest, his lack of business credentials and insurance, and the damage he did to my house, which all 15 domains route to. Theoretically, he could get a new LLC, right? I thought of that. Aside from the entire rebrand effort he would have to do, branded truck, shirts, business cards, etc., I wrote a script that crawls the state corporate registration listing using his name and automatically purchases the domains and variations of any new corporation names he registered or is an agent/officer of. Over the past 2 months, over 700 locals have visited the site. My website is the #1 result on Google if you search for his business, his name, or his parents. He stopped posting on his Facebook page, and his phone line has been disconnected. Hopefully he's switched career paths. As for legalities, I don't want money for the domains. They're not for sale and were well worded to only speak to what occurred. Inventive, vindictive, but hardly petty. I love everything except the bit about how much damage Homer Simpson did to your property. Hope your repairs get done quickly and not ruinously out of pocket. And our second story. Real-life NPC took this woman's food order and her money, then vanished like a legend. Not me, but this happened to my friend just this past weekend, and I'm still completely floored by the audacity of this random guy. So my friend's the GM at a really popular barcade in our city. If you're not familiar with barcades, it's basically a bar with a ton of vintage arcade games, so people don't sit at traditional tables like in a regular restaurant. Patrons are constantly moving around, hopping from Galaga to Skee-Ball to Miss Pac-Man. When they order food, they usually go up to the bar, place their order, grab a little number, and a server will hunt them down wherever they are to deliver their food. Well, a woman comes up to my friend and tells her she ordered food a long time ago, but it still hasn't shown up. My friend checks the system. There's no pending order under that name or number. She starts asking the bartenders and servers if anyone remembers taking the woman's order. Nothing. No one had rung it in or even spoken to her. At this point, my friend's starting to get suspicious, but she's also obsessed with figuring out exactly what happened. So she asks the woman if she remembers who took her order. The woman describes the guy and mentions he wasn't wearing a bar apron. That's the big red flag, because in this place, all the front of house staff wear aprons. The only people not in aprons are the GM, my friend, and the door guy. And the door guy definitely hadn't taken any orders that night. My friend is now officially on a mission. She heads back to the office, pulls up the security footage, and starts scanning through the camera feeds, and sure enough, she finds it. This woman had flagged down a completely random dude, some guy who was just there hanging out and playing games, and asked him if he could take her order, and this absolute legend of a scammer looks her dead in the eye and goes, "Sure." He proceeds to make up some prices on the spot, quotes her a random total, takes her cash, and then just casually walks right out the front door. Didn't even stick around to play another round of pinball. Took the money and left like it was the most normal thing in the world. My friend was honestly more impressed than angry. I mean, it's like something straight out of Catch Me If You Can. This guy saw an opportunity, committed to the bit, and walked away richer for it. And the poor woman? Well, she learned a very important life lesson. Don't just hand cash to some random dude in a bar because he might look like he works there. To top it all off, the staff felt bad for her, so they comped her meal anyway. She walked away with her food, just a little lighter in the wallet, thanks to one very bold con artist. Reminds me of a story a few years ago about a grocery store manager that used to open up a mobile cash-only express checkout during the busy rushes and pocketed every penny for a couple of years before he got caught. And our last story. Turns out my neighbor's landscaping plans included stealing half my yard. A few months back, my neighbor approached us with what seemed like a friendly proposal. He wanted to plant a row of fir trees between our properties. At first glance, it didn't seem like a big deal. He assured us the trees would be planted entirely on his property. He wasn't asking us for any money, and he made it sound like it would be a charming addition to the neighborhood's aesthetic. Classic neighborly goodwill, right? We did express some concerns, specifically about the area closer to our house. That section of our yard is heavily shaded, and we already struggle to grow grass there. Adding a dense row of large fir trees would turn the space into a shaded, damp mess. And those trees don't exactly stay small and cute. They grow tall, wide, and fast. We had plans for that part of our yard involving smaller, low-maintenance landscaping, and the idea of a towering green wall wasn't really in the vision. But again, he insisted the trees would be entirely on his side. We figured, okay, it's his land, he's not asking for anything from us, and we don't want to start a neighborhood feud, so we left it at that. On planting day, we were working from home and stepped out briefly when the landscapers were digging the holes. Right away, something felt off. The holes looked huge and were awfully close to the invisible property line, but at that stage, it was hard to tell exactly where the trees would end up. They were just holes in the ground, and we didn't want to jump to conclusions or start a confrontation over something that might be fine. So we let it go for the moment. However, once the planting was finished and we went out to take a real look, it was painfully obvious. Several of the trees were planted directly on our property. Some weren't even close to the line. They were well into our yard. Others were so close that their branches were already growing over into our space. And keep in mind, these trees were small now, but in a few years, they'd completely take over. We brought this up with our neighbor immediately. To his credit, he didn't dismiss us outright. He seemed frustrated, but asked which trees we wanted moved and where. But since none of us could say with certainty where the property line was, we told him we'd need to hire a surveyor to be sure before anything was moved. He agreed, but pressed us to get it done quickly since it was late autumn, and he wanted to move the trees before winter set in. We scheduled the survey immediately, but as luck would have it, the surveyor's schedule was packed. It took nearly a month before we had the final report, and let me tell you, that wasn't cheap, over $3,000 out of our own pocket. But when we got the results, well, it was worse than we expected. Out of the 12 trees he planted, 6 were planted fully on our property, with the trunks well into our side of the line. 4 more were planted directly on the property line itself, and another was so close that its branches were already reaching well into our yard. Only one, just one, was fully planted on his own land. With this very clear information, we sent him the plot plan and respectfully asked that he remove all 11 trees that were either on our property or directly encroaching on it. That's when things turned dramatic. He was furious. He accused us of waiting too long to tell him, as if we could have made the survey happen any faster. He ranted about how now he'd have to pay twice for landscaping and claimed we were terrible neighbors. And now, to top it all off, he's threatening to put up a giant privacy fence just to spite us. And honestly, at this point, we're wondering, are we really the bad guys here? We acted immediately when we saw there was a problem. We spent thousands out of our own pocket to get a professional survey done rather than arguing based on guesswork. And we're simply asking for what's rightfully ours, our property, without someone else's trees planted all over it. At the end of the day, we don't want these massive trees looming over our yard, making our already difficult lawn completely unusable, blocking sunlight and dropping debris all over. We're not trying to be difficult, we're just trying to maintain the home and yard we pay for. So tell me, would you just roll over and accept this? Let someone else take over part of your yard and ruin your plans for it? Because standing here, quite literally on my own property, it sure feels like we've already been more than reasonable. Your neighbor has absolutely no right to intrude on your property, and replanting of the trees illegally planted is his problem. You shouldn't even think about paying 1 cent, and they should be far enough away from the property line such that the trunks do not breach the property line over the years as the trees mature. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.